Good morning, everyone, and welcome. So glad you can all make it to this session today. My name is Caroline Wu. I will be your MC today. I'm Director of Research at Placer. I'm so excited to introduce all the wonderful guests we have for today's session. It's called Engaging Consumers at Scale with Large Format LED Media. And today, today we'll be talking about the transformative power of large format LED media in retail and property development sectors. So we're going to join some of our industry experts here. We have Barry Fry. He's president and CEO of the DPAA. We have Chip Harding, who is EVP, Simon Media and Experiences at Simon Property Group. We have Pete Simon, who's Director of Sales, Northeast OOH and Malls, SNA Displays. And for our moderator, we have Dan Height from our very own Placer, who is VP of Advertising and Media Partnerships. So give a round of applause and we'll let you get started.
Thank you, Caroline. Yeah, silence your cell phones. Those little screens, because we're going to be talking about big screens up here. So we have Simon Properties and Simon. So I guess Simon Says today.
Whoa.
I'll take Barry's jokes today. So we're seeing a lot of screens that are going up in all kinds of places, overall. Grocery stores, doctors' offices, bars, gyms, restaurants, of course, malls, different advertising opportunities for different audiences with different dwell time kind of in each one of those areas. What's driving kind of this overall growth, and how should brands be thinking about kind of these different advertising venues? Barry, maybe we'll start with you on that one.
Sure. Good to see you all. The Simon Brothers. Nice to have you here. It's a new band, Dan and the Simon Brothers. So, yeah, as we heard in the panel before, as an example, retail media is a tough business. And screens in retail and screens in all places offers an advertising and revenue opportunity to people that have physical places, but also a chance to deliver good experiences. Screens in office buildings can have emergency information, news, weather, screens in streets. And as an advertising medium, it's become incredibly powerful because it has taken the virtues of out-of-home advertising and mashed that up with all the elements of digital advertising. So now screens outside the home are, of course, digital. They run video, as we heard earlier. They have the power of video. There's not a brand or a consumer that gets up every day and says, I love video. So that's really key. And it's also become a very brand-safe environment. You can't skip the commercials. It's a very sticky environment. People stay for a while. And it's become, actually, along with retail media, the fastest digital out-of-home, which is, our purview, has become the fastest growing advertising medium around the world percentage-wise. So it's really increasing in ad revenue, and that gives all the physical places, retail, et cetera, an opportunity to share in the revenue as well as have content for good experiences.
And so let's kind of set the stage a little bit, just overall, because a lot of people don't know some of this industry and even some of the jargon in this space. And Barry, you literally represent the association for all of these venue owners and the Digital Place-Based Advertising Association. It's also global in nature in terms of what you guys see. You mentioned that, out of home overall, retail media, some of these areas that are really growing from an advertising perspective. Talk about the value from digital place-based advertising as a whole in terms of the ROI and what people are measuring on that stuff and what's driving that growth specifically.
Sure. All of our member screens and locations around the world reach people, A, on their daily journey, B, on their path to purchase, and C, at the point of purchase. So it's incredibly powerful to reach people on the go when they're about to spend. And then a lot of measurement sources. Placer does an amazing job of understanding people and movement and in a great non-PII type way, which is very powerful. And then there's other companies that match with the brand data or the store data to show lift and actual attribution. So between understanding the numbers and the movement of people through mobile services like your SDKs, we can indicate actual impressions. And the beauty about digital out of home now is, unlike the old days where out of home would be a top of funnel reach medium, now because of having designated targeted addressable commercial advertising, having programmatic, we could actually target audiences, and it becomes an audience-based medium, reaching the top of funnel and all the way down to middle and lower funnel. So it's become pretty powerful.
So, Chip, I want to kind of direct this next question to you because you're the only operator up here. Obviously, you have spaces, lots of digital screens, lots of customers, retailers you guys work with, many different consumer experiences. You've made a lot of investments in this area. So, from bringing these venues to life, conveying consumer information, creating kind of interactive capabilities, and of course, monetization. Can I talk about what Simon's overall, strategy is on what you're doing in terms of bridging this gap of consumer experience and ad monetization? You guys being that venue owner, what is your philosophy on that, and kind of talk through some of that with us?
Oh, good morning, everybody. How are you? You pretty much listed out all of the answers in your question. We've started our digital journey about 15 years ago, and I think we were a little bit ahead of our time, and we did some experimentation with a pure monetization play, and that was okay at the beginning, but we really stepped in quite large in 2016 with the interactive screens. And so we have about 1,500 of those now deployed across the country. And those enabled us to communicate directly with our consumers and also monetize the CapEx investment that we put into them. And we have continually evolved that engagement experience and that interactive touch component of with our consumers. And about 2 years ago, we launched what is called Simon Search. And in the earlier session, she talked about real-time inventory. Like, I want to know what's in the store today. And so we have now 70 retailers and about 25,000 store locations that have real-time inventory. So you can go up to any one of our interactive kiosks in our mall, and you can search for gray suede Puma shoes. And I'm going to know exactly which store right now, today, in the property that I'm in, has them in size 12. And that's an amazing thing. And so we quietly launched that about 2 years ago. And now we have millions of sessions every single month on Simon Search. And you can also do that on your phone. You can do it online, and you can do it on the screen. So that interactive capability and our ability to centrally communicate with our customers in real time is really powerful for us. But that's not the only component. So placemaking is another consideration. We have this beautiful interactive screen, three-dimensional screen in Las Vegas in front of the Forum Shops. It's not the biggest screen in Las Vegas. There's lots of them, but ours is definitely the most immersive. It's a three-dimensional sculptural tower that has 17 windows and cinematic quality audio. And so when you're walking down the sidewalk, you're literally immersed visually and with the audio in an experience that is really capturing and it's the only screen in Las Vegas that people stop and video.
Oh, wow.
And it's a beautiful thing that we were able to. And when we had Barry's face on it at one point, which was, oh boy,
Cars were crashing.
And the screen still works?
Oh yeah, it still works. But then the underpinning of all of this investment, because the CapEx is significant, is the monetization, and we're able to deliver the right audience to brands in the right environments, the last mile at the point of purchase, which is a really powerful story to be able to offer to brands.
And Barry, going back to you, because obviously malls is one of these places. You're seeing these things in all these other types of places. We have retailers, we have developers, we have venue owners. What should they be thinking about relative to, the investment of putting these screens in and, understanding kind of that advertising opportunity?
Sure. And then we have members. Simon is actually on our board of directors. Chip is one of the leaders in the industry. We have Cineplex, which is about 80% of the malls in Canada. Clepier gets about 1 billion footfall in Europe. We've got other malls as well. And yeah, they should be thinking about experience, about revenue, and then drilling down hardware. S&A delivers, great screens and great hardware. Software, so enabling programmatic and targeted abilities. They should be thinking about data, about research, about, showing the needle that's moving. And then also gathering up best practices. As, Chip is early on what he's been doing there. And there's a lot of great knowledge that may not be competitive around the world. And then what we do in our forum at DPAA, we have people engage for best practices because I know Chip actually works with the folks at Clepier in Paris, and, it's a great exchange of ideas. Not everybody has to create everything all the time. So hardware, software, data, research, screens, and then, the ability to target and understand the movement of audiences. And the other thing that's really critical, and it goes back to what we were hearing from Meta earlier, is experience. The experience in real world is really important today. So we have content companies that actually put programming on screens in addition to ads on screens. I think coming out of COVID, we've seen society-wise how important it is for people to have experiences when they connect with brands, when they connect with people. In fact, a study just came out about upscale folks in China, which have been incredibly label conscious in their consumer habits over the years. And now the studies have indicated that they no longer are just going into Gucci and buying a Vuitton bag, but they want the experience of what that's like, and what is the experience in the store, and what's the experience with friends and people in these environments outside the home. So content, experience, hardware, software, data, targeting, innovation, and utilize some of the best practices at DPAA members, at Placer. Placer's a great partner. You guys have amazing experience understanding data. So those are the elements to start with.
So we talked about CapEx, we talked about screens, we talked about different environments these are in. So Pete, really for you, we're talking about putting in these screens in these physical places. Lots of considerations to be thinking about. Is it an indoor environment, outdoor environment, the types of screens you're going to put in, overall, where they're going to be deployed? How does S&A help, developers really think about the cost of deploying these LED screens? There are several examples of other companies that are doing some really creative, financing options. In the news, we've talked about, Samsung did this with Hy-Vee. Quantella did this with Starlight Media. T-Mobile has announced some different deals. So obviously, there's lots of different companies that are doing interesting things on how to finance these screens, but also a lot of considerations in the space. So you guys are a screen company. How do you guys think about this in terms of partnering with developers and in terms of the decisions that people have to make in terms of these screens? Because you also can't, you have to also be thinking about the future of where screen technology is going, like Chip mentioned, with some of the 3D technology that's coming in. So large cost, how do you guys think about it and working with these partners?
So my focus at S&A Displays is revenue generating screens. So I'll sort of stick to that, whether it's indoor, exterior, it's sort of the same answer. But everything in development pretty much comes down to planning. You have to plan early. And a lot of times it's not the way that developers think about it, because you get architects and things involved very early because you need to. We also learn from our major client base, which is the out-of-home advertising industry. Some of them are here today. If you guys want to build a sign, you should reach out to them or me and I can introduce. But they, have taught us a lot of rules that luckily for us, your company all tracks. So you want to look at foot traffic, where the dwell times are, which way is the right of way, things like that early. And you got to think about it often on every asset that you're thinking about deploying. But in addition to that, it's also the limitations of the property. What are the store hours? What are the pavers made out of? Can we park a ton crane on that? So there's a lot of planning that goes involved, but you really have to think about it from a revenue generating perspective. You don't want to go over a certain amount of square feet. Our out-of-home friends will tell you, you can build it too big. My boss would probably, luckily he's in Vegas, he's not here. But that is the truth. You don't want to break the bank because you want those customers to continue coming back. So that's really our business model. is lowering the cost, asking the experts. But in addition to that, there's many other uses for these signs too. You can sell them on premise to tenants and increase rent. You can display artwork and, greatly improve the consumer experience, which may drive more foot traffic. But really, it's audience tracking and stuff like that. So you have to start there. You have to think like an outdoor advertising company when you're building these. And, that's what Simon Properties does so well, because 95% of their signs they sell in-house. So they're never building them too big.
Yeah, so Chip, as a owner operator of these, you also have to think about how do you digitize your locations and prioritization of some of those things. You've obviously deployed a lot of different screens. You haven't abandoned all your other type of signage. How do you guys think about it from an owner operator in terms of the number of screens you deploy, when you deploy them, prioritization, all of those things? How do you consider that?
Yeah, we've definitely learned a lot in our 15-year digital journey, and we've when I look at 2025, and we have a long list of CapEx projects for 2025 to add more hardware, basically, and there's definitely a point where too much is too much, and we're not going to generate incremental dollars for that. So we just did a project actually with SNA in Austin, Texas, a little while ago. And the CEO was looking at the designs and the renderings and saying, well, why don't you just make it bigger? And I said, we're not going to make any more money if we make it bigger. So, and then he kind of backed off of that question. But standards is another very important part. So we used to design some artistic. And so when the architects, Pete mentioned architects, when they get involved, danger. And getting them back to the point of understanding that within the industry there are standards, and the more difficult you make it for a brand to engage on the screen that you've built, the more difficult it will be. So if you stick to standard dimensions and proportions and sizes and consistency, you'll have a better experience for the brands that you want to engage on your screen. So I would definitely recommend fitting within the box, and unless you have something really, really unique, which would enable you to go outside of the box. But it's been a long journey, and I encourage you all to go on it. But too much is too much, and just figure out your monetization strategy, your engagement strategy, your interactive strategy, whatever that, your placemaking strategy, whatever that is, and hold that out in front of you as your kind of North Star in the entire journey. But they're a great partner to work with. We just completed several projects with them, and we have more in the future. But it really enhances the space, enhances the revenue, and enhances the consumer experience. So we're quite happy with what we built and where we're going.
One example of the size element you folks are talking about, if you look at all the bus shelters in New York City, the company that runs those basically took the full side of the shelter and they halved the screen. And they're making almost the full amount from half the screen, and the consumer experience is just as good and maybe some ways better. So good points you folks make. It's proven out.
So in terms of measuring the effectiveness, I mean, obviously there's the capital putting in, you obviously have weighing monetization and consumer experiences. What is overall the brands you're working with, the companies, Barry, that you guys are working with, obviously from a screen perspective, you need to prove ROI on these screens overall. How are people measuring the effectiveness of the advertising that they're running, the monetization that they're running, or the consumer engagement experiences are happening with that? Chip, let's start with you on that.
There's so many different ways to measure. I'll start with some simple ones. So on our interactive units, we have user sessions, and we have a little over 3.5 million user sessions every single month on the 1,500 screens. So it's a lot. So that is somebody stopped, touched the screen, asked for some information, got the information, they moved on. 3.5 million. Another measurement is how much money do we make off of it? And one of the things we look at is, did the brand come back? Did they buy a second campaign? And that's a really simple one, but that's my favorite one, is when they come back and buy more. From a brand point of view, we just completed a campaign with a large hotel chain that was a sweepstakes enter to win, and there was a QR code, and we were very analytical on the testing of the campaign, and every property and every screen had a unique QR code, so we knew exactly who was engaged and when and how, and then they compared that to a similar campaign that they ran entirely online, and what was the return. And they engaged the number of people that scanned the QR code or online. They clicked through to register, and then they actually completed the registration for the sweepstakes. And we found that in our consumers, the engagement, the click-through rate was higher than what they did with the online campaign. So that is another really powerful tool. And then the last one, and this is kind of specific to our tenants, is their sales lift. So we'll run campaigns where we'll take 30 stores and we will communicate digital messages, and 30 stores where we communicate nothing. And we can compare very simply the sales lift in the stores where we had the campaign versus didn't have the campaign.
And Barry, maybe to you from an overall association perspective, what are you seeing in terms of how media companies and brands are measuring the effectiveness of these programs?
Well, Chip's covered a lot of it. The generation of that data comes from a variety of sources, certainly STKs like Placer does for the mobile data. In addition, there's camera, computer vision technology. What's important about all of this is that it is very important that there's no PII, everything's anonymized and aggregated, so that that will go through the filters. But advertisers do come back; they do understand. The dwell time is valuable. The actual impressions, QR code has become a great interactivity method. We have a member actually called IR code that when you're putting art on the screens or clever ads, you don't have an actual QR code on the screen. You have a technology which looks at the screen and can actually connect you. So all these interactive methods now, and they also weigh it on a cost per thousand. And what is happening and growing the industry is now we're seeing a shifting of video monies and digital monies into these screens and physical places. And that brings a nice cost per thousand because, once again, the power of video is incredibly important. So that's some of the ways it's measured.
In terms of, because you mentioned something around privacy, and it's kind of a question I want to get to. We're not going to be a privacy panel on this conversation, but obviously privacy from an advertising perspective, the world is moving to a more, stringent privacy, not less stringent, overall, whether through regulation or operating system changes, consumer awareness, what have you. The out-of-home industry has never been one-to-one. It's always been one-to-many or one-to-few, depending on what type of environments you're in. So in many ways, where the broader advertising industry is going, the out-of-home industry in many ways has already been there, more contextual, more content-oriented around that. Making sure that, especially from a mall owner perspective, maintaining consumer privacy is something I'm sure that you guys battle or understanding and not violating some of that stuff. Certainly from an association perspective, you have a lot of members, and from an infrastructure perspective, what's the perspective of the panel just in terms of where privacy is going? How important is it in terms of the industry and operators?
Well, it's very important, and I'll let my friends over here talk more, but from a high level, in the area where Google and Apple and all these companies are taking back the cookies, and cookies are getting deprecated for all the obvious reasons that Dan indicates, the power of context is powerful like no other. And that's what we have, is the power of environment, the power of context, the power of audience. So that is starting to ameliorate where cookies are going away.
Yeah, disclosure is the most important thing. So hiding something and surprising people with it is a bad idea. And then navigating the landscape, the sort of the legal landscape it's evolving, it's constantly changing. So there's the state of Illinois, you can't use computer vision technology, and there's parts of California where you also can't do that. So that just makes it, we don't really use it we don't use it at all, actually, with our screens. We use it for security and safety in a big way, but with our screens and the delivery of an ad unit or an impression, we don't use it, because we want a network that we can operate the same across the whole country, and because of the different regulations and different municipalities, makes it challenging to do that. So we've moved on from that. So.
And from a hardware perspective, obviously we're not a software developer, so it satisfies the answer here, but we more look at it as a security question because we don't want to be on any trade websites with indecent imagery or something like that on one of our. So it's really important to make sure that you're deploying very secure systems for the back end for these LEDs because they are generally in Times Square type places where they get a lot of eyeballs, but it also satisfies the other question of privacy as well.
All right, 15 seconds now. Next 2 to 3 years, where are things, Barry?
I think retail media within physical places, the retail media business globally is a $140 billion business. And inside retail in this country, 85% of purchases take place in physical stores, whilst that $140 billion is 99.5% online. So we're going to be seeing a shifting to retail media in physical stores, of which I think maybe now it's about 300 million. I think we'll see about $1 billion in a couple of years in physical stores, physical screens.
Chip, next 2 to 3 years.
First party data is going to be informing all of our decisions and the decisions that our brand partners make. And so we're super excited to speak, and we, in the earlier session you were talking about omnichannel, and omnichannel is very important. And as us as the mall developer, we also have shopsimon.com, which is a marketplace that a lot of our retailers participate in. We have 160 different websites. We have multiple social channels. We have a VIP shopper program with 25 million members. And so we have just in 2023, I spent 12 months in privacy law practice, and we changed and updated all of that. There's 12 months of my life I'll never get back. But in 2024, we've begun to harness that data, and it's super exciting. So when I look at 2025 and 2026, the ability to inform decisions through first-party data is going to be a game changer for everybody.
And Pete, final word.
Yeah, so piggyback off what Barry said, and in both environments, both hardware, at a home, and retail, humans sort of have a rubber band effect as new things come out. Unfortunately, at a home, my favorite industry, it's had to deal with radio, TV, and then the internet, and everything took a bite of the pie. COVID, did a number on retail, at a home, everything that we're talking about here today. And there is a rubber band effect. As people have easier work-life balances, as more people are working from home, people are finding more time to go to the mall. You guys just did a white paper on that. Encourage everybody to read it. So all of that stuff is going to hit all of our industries because we're all professionals that are selling something in this industry. And everybody's a salesperson too, even if you're not, because we're all selling something. So I see a resurgence in the industry.
Well, great. Well, with that, let's thank our panel for having great conversation on screens.